Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Another Mother, a parenting podcast by My Spring Harvest with me, Emma Borquay. I am married to Isaac, who is a music artist / broadcaster. He's also known as Governor B, and a mum to Ezra, who is 3, and Hallie, who was born at the end of 2022. And since becoming a family of 4, there's been a lot of learning for us all. You know, big life events, they have a way of requiring you to take stock of what matters, what your priorities are, and what new things you might need to learn and practice and so on. But I think for me, realizing just how life-shaping becoming a parent is was something that I had underestimated a little bit. So I'm on a journey of seeking some answers to my never-ending questions. So throughout the episodes of this podcast, I'm going to be speaking to some brilliant people who are either further ahead on this parenting journey and can share their reflections and wisdom, or I'll be speaking to others who are actually at a similar stage to me in the thick of raising little ones, and we can hopefully compare notes and share some laughs. So today I'm very excited to be speaking to a couple that I've admired from afar for a while now. It's John and Jade Reynolds. They've got 2 young children, Elijah, who is 6, and Aralee, amazing name, who is 3. And they share loads of fun family content on social media. And they also give a glimpse of their lives as an interabled family. So Jade has been a wheelchair user since just before her 13th birthday. So in our conversation, I get to hear a bit more about Jade's diagnosis and how being told she wouldn't walk again at such a pivotal time in her life has impacted her, and how this has in part shaped their family into what it is today. So I'm going to let them say the rest. But let's go. Welcome, Jade and John Reynolds, to the Another Mother podcast.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, excited to be here.
It's so good to finally be able to get to chat to you guys, because I've followed John on social media for a little while now. Your TikTok is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. How long have you been kind of doing the content stuff for?
Just over a year. So I've never had the idea really of doing it, and I never set out to do TikTok, if that makes sense. I think I shared a funny story of something my 6-year-old Elijah did on my Instagram story, and I just got a few more DMs than I usually get of people like, this is really funny. And I was like, oh, sure, I might whack this on TikTok, and it did quite well. It wasn't like crazy views, but it got about 50k or something, and suddenly it became like my most followed platform, and then it kind of just carried on from there, really. So yeah, it's a bit crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It's so funny. What do you think about the TikToks, Jade?
It's taken me a little while to get my head around it, because in our family, John's always been the performer. So I think because you've done stand-up comedy before as well, I could see how it really suited him. But for me, I was a bit I was one of those people who use social media just to watch other people.
Yes.
Stalker.
Yeah,
stalker.
Basically. I didn't
Love
post that much, occasionally, but I didn't really post regularly. And then this has all happened, and it's I'm kind of caught up in it, because I kind of see John as the main person, and I'm the featured wife almost. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah,
so it's been a bit
right.
surreal, really. And because I actually don't have a TikTok, John has a TikTok. It's weird to me, when we've recognised when we're out and about, and I'm oh, how do people know who we are? To me, it's all a bit weird.
I love that you've got your roles. So you are the performer, John, of the family, and I loved your TikTok of your children, where I think you were just talking about your kids, and you were describing their very different personalities, and then there was another one where you were trying to convince your daughter to say please.
Yeah.
That I was laughing my head off. I sent it to my husband. I was like, this is so funny, because she was just not having any of it, was she?
Basically, she wanted me to get her dressed, and she's an age where she can get dressed herself. I don't mind helping from time to time, but I'm also come on, I don't want to do everything for you. And so I said to her, if you want me to help you, you've got to say please. And she was like, no. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do it then, because that's rude, isn't it? And it just escalates to the point where she said we had this line put on T-shirts in the end, because we had people asking us about it, and pencil cases and stuff. But I keep asking her to say please, and she came out with the incredible line, I said please yesterday.
Yes.
It's so funny. And I was like, well, kind of going to have to say please every time you want people to do something you would like them to do. It doesn't really work like that. And also, I'm not sure you did.
Oh my gosh. So you've got "I said please yesterday" on t-shirts.
Yeah, well, we had it for a little while. Yeah, a few people bought them and like mugs and stuff like that. It's quite funny.
Oh, I love it. That is so funny. Do you feel like your kids' different personalities take after each of you? Can you see yourselves in them?
I think your mum says that Elijah is very like you growing up, and he's very sensitive. He hates it. Even if I raise my voice up like slightly, he hates it. Like he'll literally get really upset.
Yeah, sometimes he'll be like, "Why are you shouting at me?" And both of us are there like,
we're
okay,
not.
No
we're
one's
just
shouting.
being a bit firm. We're not shouting. So he hates it. Whereas Arily, if I even like, if I full on shout at her, rather than like be afraid of me, she literally comes back at me like even stronger. Like she wants to fight, and I'm like, okay, that doesn't work with her. I definitely was sassy as a child, but probably not quite as sassy as Arily.
Yeah,
she's like me on steroids.
Yeah. I think I'm more similar. So I'm definitely a people pleaser, and I think Elijah is as well.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind if people don't like me, but I want to know why at least.
Yeah.
Like, and I'd prefer if they didn't, and I prefer if they loved me as well. Not just thought I was all right. Like, I want to be adored.
You went from "I'm a bit of a people pleaser" to "I want everyone to adore me."
I went from a bit of a people pleaser to egomaniac.
So I think with your like social media, your TikTok and stuff, I feel like something that definitely draws people to it is just how dynamic you show yourselves as a family. Like you show the funny parts, you show the hard parts, you show everything, and it's so real. Like you just watch it, and I think everyone can see a bit of themselves in your family setup, because we all just have glimpses of that, don't we? But another thing I guess that draws people into your family is that you're actually an interabled family. So Jade, some people might not know that you're a wheelchair user, and that's been since you were a teenager, right?
Yeah, so 2 weeks before my 13th birthday, I was healthy all my childhood, so I had a completely normal childhood. And I was at the park with my dad and younger sister. I was on a swing. I jumped off the swing because we were leaving to go home, and I felt shooting pains down my thighs out of nowhere. And they were so intense that I actually just lay down on the wet grass. And my dad thought I was messing around. So he was like, "Come on, Jade, get up. We need to go." And I felt really strange. And I managed to get up, and I saw a bench across the park. And I just thought, I just need to sit down. And like with each step, I could feel the power draining out of my legs. I felt a bit like a puppet. It was really hard to like coordinate them. Managed to get to the bench and sat down, and I just couldn't get back up. And my dad was just like really confused, like what's going on. I was like, I can't stand up. So he had to piggyback me home. Thankfully, we weren't too far from our house. And then we went to A&E, and they thought I was faking it because nothing had happened.
No.
So they kept trying to encourage me to get up and walk. And it was like, well, I can't. I could move my legs at that point, but I couldn't weight bear through them. And then, so I was admitted. I was in hospital for a few months. They didn't know what was wrong with me. They didn't know whether it was going to travel up me. So it was quite a scary time. And then after a few months, they diagnosed me with something called acute transverse myelitis. So it's very rare. In fact, the consultant said to me that it's so rare that I had more chance of winning the lottery than getting it. So I was like, oh, I should have started. I was a bit young to do the lottery. I was only 12. But, and basically what it is it's so rare they don't fully know what causes it, but they think it's an autoimmune disease, and they think I had a normal cold virus in my body. My immune system went to attack that, got confused, and I attacked my own spinal cord. Wow. Which made it swell, and then it rubbed against the vertebrae in my back, and it created like a small hole in my spinal cord. So now the signals go down from my brain, but they don't all reach my legs. So that's basically the gist of it. And so yeah, since 12 really, I've been a wheelchair user. They did hope that I'd recover. Some people do recover and they have a limp, but I was just one of the unfortunate ones, and I didn't recover. So yeah.
Wow. And I guess like how you just said that you were kind of walking or you were moving over to the bench trying to get to somewhere that you could like hold on to. And although it's a very physical battle, probably in that moment as well, it's a mental battle as well, isn't it? Because it must be so scary. You're 12, nearly 13. That's terrifying.
Definitely. And I think at the time, I was worried, but I wasn't overly worried because
Yeah.
nothing had happened. So it wasn't like, oh, you've been in a car accident. So I was just thinking, I'll be fine tomorrow. I'll go into hospital and they'll tell me what's wrong with me. I'll have the medicine or whatever, and I'll go home. And at first they did think it was a trapped nerve. So for the first 24 hours, they just kept saying to me, just keep trying to wiggle your toes, because if you can do that, it means, you're recovering. And it just never happened. So I think it was in the I think after about 3 to 4 months, they told me that I wasn't going to walk again. And that's really when I kind of had to process, okay, well, what does that actually mean for my life going forward? And even then, I think people expect you to like have a really big reaction to that kind of news. And I didn't, I just kind of accepted it. But looking back, I think that was because I don't think in that moment you can fully understand what that means. Like, what does that actually mean for my life? I don't really know. My only experience of being paralyzed was being in a hospital at that point. So it was like, that was the start almost of the journey of like recovering my life again, really, and like learning what I couldn't do and things. So yeah.
Yeah, it's such like a pivotal age, isn't it, as well? Like a pivotal time of life where you start to kind of get your independence from your family and you wanting to like go out and do stuff with your friends and stuff. So it must have been quite a shift like for your whole family together to walk through. But you were Christians at the time as well, weren't you?
Yes, yeah.
Did you feel like... Oh, sorry, go
I grew up in
on.
a Christian family and I was baptized at 11. So I very much had my own faith by that point. And that really helped me, because I remember I had like Christians and non-Christians kind of come visit me, and both of them would be saying to me, why would God let this happen to you? Because it was so confusing for everyone, like you've not done anything wrong and things. But it's so funny because looking back I can really see the wisdom in it. But I remember I would say to them, well, why not me though? Like, why wouldn't it be me? Like, so other people are supposed to get ill, but I'm not. Like, for me, that's just not how I thought about it.
Wow.
But I think looking back, that was definitely like God imparted wisdom, because that's, even for my age, I'm 33 now. Like, I'm like, wow, like
it's good.
That's good for me now. Like, I need to like, think in those ways. So yeah, it was a big shift for my family. I couldn't go home. They had to build an extension so I could go home to have a downstairs bedroom and shower room. But that took a long time. So I was like 13 and I had my bed in the living room.
Oh.
So as you can imagine, it was not great. No privacy. It was just every teenager's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
And I had that for about a year. So then when I eventually did get my own room, it was like, oh, this is like my sacred space,
Get out of my room.
Yeah. Big signs on the door like, do not enter. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's like such a huge thing to happen in your life. But I think it's so incredible that you were saying that at just that young age that you had that perspective of like, why not me? I've never thought about something like that before. I don't know. I just think that's an incredible perspective to have so young. And I can't actually remember exactly what I was like at 13 or what I was thinking about my future at the time. I guess it evolves so much, doesn't it, as you go through your teen years. Even in my 20s, even now, I'm like, who am I going to be? And I'm like 30 already. But I don't know when I started thinking about having children one day or what kind of my family life would look like, because I feel like it's quite a societal expectation just on every human that like one day you're going to just grow up and have a family, and you just expect it, even if you don't necessarily want that or you don't necessarily plan for that yourself. But after you had your diagnosis and you knew at that point that you weren't going to walk again, did you have thoughts or fears about what this was going to mean for your future of becoming a mum one day?
Yeah, I think at the time I kind of felt quite isolated from my peer group, because they all had the same expectations of, yeah, you grow up, you get married, you have kids. And for me, I was like, whoa, like I might not ever find anyone, like I may not ever be able to, like, I don't know, get married. Like, I didn't know if I could have kids, because obviously I'd had no one to have the discussion with me. So I was like, does that affect your fertility? I don't know. So I very much, like, for the first kind of year was very much thinking, oh.
You did say a doctor came to you.
So then when I was 14, I went to a spinal rehab place called Stoke Mandeville, and it's like the main one in the whole of the UK. And I remember one of the nurses saying to me, they were kind of giving me a little bit of like a list of all the things that I could still achieve and stuff. And she was like, yeah, and you're still fertile, you can still have kids naturally, you can still, but at the time, rather than thinking, yes, I was just like, I'm cringing inside.
Yeah.
Like, this stranger's talking to me about this. I was just like mortified. And I was thinking, I'm just trying to live day to day, like, be my 14-year-old self. And you're like, you can still have sex naturally, like we do courses. I was like, what the heck? Like, I'm literally dying inside of, you know, what that could mean for you. We have people who were married and then one of them became paralyzed, and then, you know, we have to take them on that journey of reclaiming their sex life. And I'm like 14, literally.
Like, I just want to know if I can go to a Spice Girls concert.
It's just like, oh my gosh, like, this is too much, like, I want to die. But actually, like, when I got to my late teens, I was actually really thankful that I had all that information, because I was like, okay, like, that is still a possibility for me. And I was still very much, I don't know if I will get married, I don't know whether I would want that, like, I don't know whether in my situation it would be difficult, like, kind of managing. I know relationships are difficult anyway, but I'm bringing this whole other, like, big issue into a relationship. That's how I would see it. And so I very much was like, well, we'll just see, we'll play it day by day, and I won't say no, but I won't, like, assume that it's definitely going to happen. So I just kind of was like, well, I'll just get on with my life, and I'll just you know, do what I can to enjoy it, and just see what happens, really.
So you took the information, as cringy as it was, and you put it in your reserve of your brain for when you might need it one day.
Exactly.
I love that. So then along came John. That should be like the name of a book or something. I don't know. So how did you guys meet?
So we met at London School of Theology. So we were both training. Well, not. It's not like kind of training to go into ministry. It's kind of a bit more academic than that. It's not, but like it's Bible college essentially. And it differs from some of the others where there's a bit less placement probably, and there is a bit more emphasis on, I guess, the studying side of it. We really enjoyed that. You were the year below me. And we were just kind of mates at uni, really. Like, well, I thought we were. Like, I said to Jade, we always got on. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, I don't like the way you said yeah. Like, yeah. Like,
I think we had a lot of mutual friends who we both got on well with, but I'd never spent a lot of time with you.
No.
And I thought you were a little bit annoying.
Yeah.
Really. Because, we'd all be in the pub and he'd be at the centre of it telling these stories. And I don't know, I just thought, oh.
Jealous.
I just thought,
probably jealous.
The attention a little bit, So, but then I got to know you. Like, you graduated, and then with the distance, the heart grew fonder, and we developed a friendship.
I think as well, like I was dating somebody else at the time, and I think also like. So I just didn't really hang out with girls. Do you know what I mean? Like, particularly, I was just playing football, and watching football,
okay,
and like studying, and so I think like I always thought you were really nice. I always thought you were really funny, and things. So I think like it wasn't like a total shock.
Didn't you say it was when one of your friends who didn't go to uni asked you if you would ask me on a date for them?
Yeah,
that made you think, oh.
So like. Yeah, like they just reached out and they were like, you were at uni with Jade, weren't you? And I was like, yeah. And it was like, we weren't dating at the time, obviously. Like, and he was just like, yeah, like, she seems really nice. Like, I just wondered,
I didn't know him.
Like, if you could reach out. So he'd been at uni very, very briefly and things, but not while Jade was there. So I think and then he'd visited or something, and things. And so I'd sort of like pass that on to Jade, and she was like, oh, I'm sure he's a lovely guy, but like, I just don't know him at all. So I won't, and things. And I think then like, I don't know whether I think it just like planted that seed, like where I was single now, and I was like, to be fair, she is like really hot and really lovely and really fun and stuff. So I was like, just sort of, so I started flirting a little bit and things. Like, and you like chatted with your friend and stuff. Like, not straight away though. I wasn't like, I kind of my friend is interested in you.
Asking for a friend. What's your number?
Okay, you're not open to dating him, but what do you think about me? It was no. So I think we were just chatting a little bit, and every now and then, like,
we got on well.
Yeah. We did. Good.
By that point, I was like, I'd warmed up to you a bit more, and I was like, oh no, he's a nice guy.
And so I think I like was flirting a little bit, like through Facebook Messenger, and was like chatting to her and things. And you like showing the message to friends, like, is John Reynolds just being like,
is he being friendly or flirty?
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out. I thought you were flirting, but because you're quite a big character and you're very friendly, I didn't want to assume. So I was like, is he? And they were like, yes, he is.
You didn't want to get carried away with wishful thinking.
Well, it was when he started liking all my photos and commenting on them all, and that was at the point where it came up on everyone's homepage.
And I didn't know that. So I'd literally gone through and liked about 700 of her photos. It wasn't that many. It was probably about 10.
It was a fair few, all consecutively.
Okay, but it was double figures. It hadn't reached treble figures. Okay, it was about 10. But then that came up on other people's things. So it's like John Reynolds was like Jade Greasley's photo. John Reynolds was like Jade Greasley's photo.
Yeah.
Like, so then your friends, basically, I think mutuals could see that. And being at uni together, we had about 300 mutuals or whatever. So then your friend was like, why does John Reynolds just like to load of your photos? I think she
called you out on Facebook and was like, John Reynolds, why are you liking all of Jade's photos?
I was like, oh, my kids have got on my phone. I didn't even have kids, so I couldn't even use that excuse. So like, I think I was just like, oh, like, we're just chatting, just being an encouraging Christian.
My cheeks are actually hurting from smiling so much while you guys said that story. So you got together at uni. So I'm assuming you were like early 20s or late teens?
Yeah, so you were in your last year and I just left.
I was 22 and you were 23.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was still in London, so I was still close by. I just got a youth and children's worker job at a church in Bromley, so I was pretty close by. So I could visit a fair bit, which is good. But then when you graduated, you were back in Swansea, so then it was long distance.
We had a bit of
for
long
a little
distance
while.
then, didn't we, for about 2 years.
Yeah.
And then we got married.
So how long were you dating before you got married? Like 3 years? Maybe more?
Yeah, something like that. It's all blurry now. How long have we been married for? Nearly 8 years.
Yeah.
And then, I think we've been together 2.5 years when we got married.
Oh, so then you got married. And now you've been married for 8 years.
Yeah.
That's a lot of years. I'm 8 years too.
Are you? Nice.
Yeah, only like 2 weeks ago. But yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Wild ride, guys. Wild ride. But so when you got married, had you spoken before you got married about what you wanted your future family to be like, if you wanted to have kids? Because, people say like you should have those conversations before you get married. I can't actually remember having those conversations before I got married.
Yeah, not in depth. So we both knew we wanted kids. But I think we thought we'll get married, we'll have a few years, and then we'll just talk about it and then try for kids.
But Jade got herself pregnant within a month.
No, it wasn't that quick, but it was quick, Emma. It was. So I was married in the September. By the December, I was pregnant.
Oh, that's very fun.
A bit sooner than we were anticipating.
Oh.
And I think, and we'd only had sex once in that time as well, so it's absolute stitch up.
That's so amazing, though, and that's your son.
Yeah, that's our son. And it was a bit scary for me because I thought I'd have loads of time to kind of like investigate what it meant to be like a wheelchair user, paralysed and pregnant and a mother. I thought I'd have years to like look up online and maybe like look at other people, find other people who'd done it. And obviously it happened so quickly. I didn't have that. So it was like, I remember just being like, oh my gosh, I feel like quite scared because I don't know if my pregnancy going to be any different to like anyone else's.
And I think like you were a psycho when you were pregnant with Elijah as well.
It was the hormones. It was I was.
It was different for you than with Arilie. I don't know if it's a male testosterone like coursing through your body, but like I remember we were watching TV at one point, like, and honestly, we were watching the show where. So I think we both knew, even though we didn't know, like you then were like, okay, like. I'm going to do a pregnancy test?
Well, I knew I was pregnant because I was watching this morning, and I don't know whether you know Dick Van Dyke. Okay, he was in Mary Poppins.
Okay.
He's like really old. He's like in his 90s. Okay, so like quite like an old movie. Like really cute. He's really cute, like in his 90s.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was dancing and singing on This Morning, like all the old Mary Poppins songs. I'm like, wow, he's 94, whatever. He's still dancing, doing what he loves. And I burst into tears. I'm not someone who cries, and I was like so emotional about it. And I just thought, oh no, something's wrong. Something's not quite right. This is not normal for me.
But I think that was one of the other reasons why I think it can be so hard, especially for women when, and Elijah, if you're watching this, we love you so much and you're such a blessing. But like when it isn't necessarily planned, so to speak, and then you're already in that situation and you're also flooded with like all these hormones and things. I think it is a really like challenging time where I think the closest I can imagine it as a guy, from how I can relate to, based on your behaviour, how I am when I feel that way, is when I'm just absolutely exhausted. Like, and I'm not saying it's the same. I'm not saying I know what it's like for women to go through all those hormones, but I think like that's when I'm like just irritable, just angry for no reason, or just emotional for no reason. It feels like sometimes, and I think like to be in that almost sometimes perpetual state, and then also dealing with such a big life change. I think like it was quite. We were really. I was really happy.
Once I was shocked, but then when I got over the shock, I was like, okay, this is happening. Like, let's just do this.
Yeah.
And I think added, like you've already asked them, like the added tensions of disability.
It was more that my biggest worry was because I felt like I hadn't had time to research. But like, I mean, thankfully, I had 2 very straightforward pregnancies. I didn't really have anything different. The only thing different really was I had to, after I gave birth, I had to inject myself with like a blood thinner because you're more likely to get blood clots from sitting down all the time. So that was a bit that I didn't like. I was like, I have to inject myself. I
think also like, you did so well because like as you got heavier and things like transferring from your chair to the sofa or the bed or the shower seat.
I use my arms a lot to lift myself. So I'm usually quite capable. I can move myself on and off things and quite strong. But when I got heavily pregnant, I mean, I felt like Humpty Dumpty because I was like really big and round on the top with these skinny little legs. It was really hard to lift myself. I was like the extra weight. I couldn't bend over because the bump was in the way. So I dropped things on the floor, which I already struggle to pick things up off the floor anyway. I can just about do it. When I was pregnant, I was just like...
Was that having a basketball up your top so you just can't bend forward?
I was like, well, that's there for the rest of the day then until John gets home.
I actually think that I'm going to like maybe start a petition that at your first like midwife check, they should give you a litter picker just to be like, you're probably going to need this throughout your pregnancy.
We do have 2 of them now.
Yeah.
What 2? Because if one falls on the floor, I've got another one to pick up. I live the hard way.
And I think if she drops both of them, it's her own fault.
I deserve it.
You get what you deserve.
I love that. So Jade, you said that you felt like you didn't really have time to do all of your research into what pregnancy might be like for you. On reflection, do you feel like it was actually better that you hadn't gone and like read loads of stories or read loads of stuff and that you actually just got to experience it?
Yeah, I think so, because of the kind of person I am as well. I think I could have maybe got a bit hung up on any like negative stories, and I think because pregnancy is so different for every woman anyway, it's different for them, and never mind like obviously being in the wheelchair. I think it was just like, well, there's no choice now, there's no like all that, there's no point worrying because it's happening. So I think I'm quite glad that I didn't get a chance to maybe like hear any horror stories. And I think, I mean, now it's like with social media, it's really nice because I follow quite a few different women who are also wheelchair users who have had children or are pregnant. And it's quite nice that there's that positive side to things now with social media where you don't feel as alone. Like I think as a disabled person, you could be, I don't really know many other disabled people apart from when I go into hospital or I go into like a unit with other disabled people. Like usually you feel like you're the only one in your kind of vicinity with your issues. So I think that's something that's really positive. But I think back then, even going back to like 2016, which is when I had Elijah, like I think I would have probably just come across like negative articles or whatever. So no, I'm glad I just kind of went with it. And I didn't need, it turns out I didn't need to worry because it was completely fine. But yeah, it was like a bit scary because I had to go to our local hospital, but because I was paralysed, they wanted me to give birth in Stoke Mandeville, which is a National Spinal Injuries Unit, because I have rods in my back. So not only did I become paralysed at 12, I also then developed scoliosis as a teenager because I was slightly stronger on my right side than my left side. So it pulled my spine over into like a C. And so I had metal rods from the top of my neck to my pelvis. And so what they were concerned about was whether basically I could be awake during the birth. We'd already decided it was best to probably have a C-section. But they didn't know whether they'd be able to get an epidural in, so then I could stay awake whilst they did the C-section. But because of all the rods and things, I mean, they tried about 20 times to get the epidural
I think it was 17.
In. It was
I think they had different people because they had her
everyone
scan,
had to go.
so they were trying to have a look, and I think
they're trying to find a hole that they could get the needle in, weren't they?
Oh,
with all the metal work in my back.
And to be fair, I think it was one of those where I think part of that was they wondered if you might like to be awake for it, so that you didn't have to come round and then your baby was already here. So I think it was a nice thing. But as it went on, there was a part of me as like protective husband, like dad, feeling like just feels like you're trying to see who can win now, like which of the doctors can get it in,
it's like
kind
a
of
bit
thing.
Of a challenge,
it was and I think it was with you in mind, but you also kind of went a bit protective and stuff. But
no, so they couldn't do that, so then they had to put me to sleep, which, to be fair, that was fine. That's quite a nice labour.
You love that feeling,
going to sleep, waking up, oh, you've got a baby.
Yeah, but did that feel like a bit of a dream? Like, was it, because when you come around from being like sedated anyway, you do feel a bit like dreamy, so then to be like, here's your baby, were you like, wait, am I awake or not?
What about that?
It was really surreal, and I was so drowsy as well because of anaesthetic, and like, so it did take like a few hours for me to fully register what happened.
Because they also were trying, like they do, I think, for most situations, trying to get you to feed as quickly as you can, for like that bonding and things. So I remember coming in, I was giving Elijah in a little towel, and I was just sat outside in my little my hot blue hat. And like gowns and stuff, yeah, exactly. And it was just holding him, and he was like trying to. I could see that little tongue going, trying to feed, like straight away on the towel. He was just going like I've got a little video of it. It was like a little lizard child, and so like his little tongue going out. So then I think I had him for about 20 minutes or so, just in this really surreal moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I've got a little child now.
Me yet,
and I hadn't seen you, but they told me you were okay and things. And so then I brought him in for you, and straight away, obviously, they were trying to get him to like feed. But I felt for you because you like that classic just come round where it was like you just woken up kind of thing.
I didn't know what was going on. I was like, oh, he's a baby. Oh, he's feeding. Oh, okay. Like it was all just a bit, it was very surreal.
Yeah. It is. Those moments are so crazy. I've got a really funny picture of when I had Ezra, my first baby, and they were doing that same thing. Like I just had him and they were trying to like show me how to feed. And there's a picture where I thought I was holding Ezra, but I was holding the midwife's arm. So I'm like cradling her arm, but she's actually holding his head. And I didn't know until I saw the picture like a week later, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I thought I was holding Ezra."
So she was holding him. Yeah. I thought at first you meant
I was just like cradling her arm, and she was like holding him.
I thought you meant at first someone else had Ezra, and you were just holding her arm, baby.
I was like really spaced out. Oh dear. But no, it is like such a crazy experience, isn't it? Like having a baby, new life. There is so much unknown. There is so much that you might expect, and then you're like, okay, wait, what is going on right now? Like there's just so much to it. And then I think as your children are then on earth and they grow, it's just such a massive life shift. And so do you guys feel like becoming parents is what you expected it to be, or did you just not really have any expectations?
I'd say now it feels more like what I expected it to be. Now they're like 6 and 3. Like it's still chaotic at times, but there's kind of like the intensity of having a baby and a toddler that's starting to ease now. And so I'd say like the first year, particularly after having Elijah, because I got unwell after having Elijah as well. I got sepsis and was really ill. And
so Jade was on bed rest for about a year.
Yeah, with a newborn. It was
crazy.
Oh
my goodness.
So basically what they think is, because I was carrying extra weight, sat in the wheelchair, you can get things called pressure sores, and old people get them as well. But basically, if you're in one position for too long, it pushes the blood away from the skin, and the skin dies, and you get an infection. So it's a bit gross. But they think that happened and it just wasn't picked up on. And so I got sepsis when he was about 2 months old. I got rushed into hospital with sepsis, and it was all like really serious. And I remember finding that very stressful, being exhausted from having a newborn, not sleeping, then trying to manage my own care, but also needing to care for him because he was breastfed. He wouldn't take a bottle, but they were wanting to try and give me drugs that you couldn't breastfeed with. So then
he point blank refused the bottle.
Yes.
Midwives were like, if it goes a day or so, they'll just take it and stuff. We had to use the Cowpole syringes of milk. He would not take it at all.
And after about 3 days, he got like really weak, and like, so I'm there really ill in hospital. They're bringing him into me, and he's really limp, and I'm feeling awful because I'm feeling torn for the first time in my life, where before I was a mother, it was like my health was priority. And then all of a sudden I've got this other little being that I'm like trying to like look after as well. It was really hard. And thankfully after 3 days they did let me feed him. And so I was like, and we fed him and he was like fine again. But it was really emotional for me. And I felt really like, this is motherhood. Like, this is like that tension that we live in of like kind of self-care for ourselves, because if we're looked after, then the rest of the family will be better for it. But also you can't just, go, well, I'm not going to look after my child. So it's really hard.
I'd say like, I'd agree with you completely. I think as you nailed it. Like, I think now they're 3 and 6, it feels a bit more like probably what people who don't have kids see kids like, maybe. But I think like, because they are chatty and they are cute, and you do have those moments where they'll say something that genuinely makes you laugh, like cry laugh, because it's just hilarious. And they say things that are just absolutely mental or horrendous as well, and you try and teach them through those moments. But like the early, I think the bit that was the biggest shock for me was that first 2 years probably with Elijah, and probably again the newborn stage with Arily, because then you've never done a newborn with a toddler already. I think those stages is like, and when they just don't sleep and you're trying to just tag team it and you're trying to fit your sleep in around it. And I was working for a church at the time as a youth pastor, so it was relatively flexible. But it was still like mad. I remember taking Elijah out at 3 a.m. in his pushchair at one point because he was just screaming just so you could get some sleep. And I remember the police pulled alongside me because I think they thought I was like a drug dropper or something. I think they thought the pushchair was like full of drugs or something, because like, who walks their baby at 3 a.m. kind of thing. And I was like, sorry, he's like 3 weeks old. He had fallen asleep by this point. But it's like they had a look in, they were like, fine. Like, they were probably like really quite curious. But like, I think like there's just nothing like that.
And nothing can prepare you for it. Like, I know people say to you when you're pregnant or whatever, oh, get ready for no sleep. But because you've never had any other situation in your life where for a prolonged period of time you've not slept properly, you can't prepare for that. You can't really know what that means. And then so you're literally thrown in the deep end, aren't you? And you're just like, you survive and you're like, wow, it's amazing what little sleep the body can, live off. But it's really tough.
And it's so weird as well, because there's such precious times. You look back at it and all of that seems probably quite negative. And then people who are pregnant right now listen to this are probably like, oh, but like, I think like we were looking back at videos recently of them at that age and you're like, oh, like, we're done. We're not going to have any more. But you are like, oh, it's just so cute. And I think every stage of parenthood is probably like that. I was listening to your chat with Anna the other day and things. And like, I think like with grown up kids as well, I think like every stage is probably tough and every stage is a privilege. And I think it's just like, you're constantly like, there's that real balance, isn't it? Of like the excitement of like one day being a grandparent or your children getting married maybe, and things is like, that just sounds so lovely and exciting. But I know my mum says like, you never stop worrying at least a little bit. Like if your kids are going through stuff, like you never stop being a parent. And so I think it is just that those beautiful stages where you're like, you're trying to make the most of it because you know that you'll miss it when they're not like that anymore. Yet at the same time, cutting yourself some slack as a parent and acknowledging like, sometimes it's crazy. Sometimes like if adults treated you the way your kids do, there's the potential you'd cut them out of your life for your own self-care. Like you'd be like, they're a toxic person and you just need them gone, like especially if you listen to like hack internet advice and things. And so I think like there is that real difficulty of like managing, being kind to yourself and recognizing you're doing your best and things. And I think like family is such a support. Like that's the other thing I'd say to parents, I guess. Not that you asked.
No, go for it.
But I genuinely think the whole like family nearby is such friends or family that can genuinely help you and have them for a period is
because we didn't have any family living close to us as well when we had Elijah.
And when you were going through that brutal time, I think like it was that we had a lovely church and things, but we were still quite new to the church as well. I'd only been working there just under a year, I think, or about just over a year maybe when Elijah came along. So still felt quite a lot to ask friends to be like, hey, could you have our like newborn and things, even for us, like do we know them well enough, do they know us well enough kind of vibe and things. So I think when Arilee came along and like your parents live really near to us now,
I was actually secretly grateful for the pandemic because I was like, at least Arilee's about 8 months old at the time. I was like, you're home all the time. I've got help with the baby. Like that was definitely like a plus point for me at that point. I was like, oh, okay, good.
Yeah, that double teaming stuff. But it is what we thought it was, and I think it's also not in some ways too.
Yeah. You're so right though about how with every stage comes new challenges, and you always think, oh, we'll get through this bit and then the next bit will be easier, and then it just presents a whole load of challenges of its own. But it doesn't mean that it's not amazing and that you're not loving it as you go. But it's just, I guess it's a challenge for us as parents to try and be present to whatever moment that we're in, because we know that we are going to look back on it at some point with fondness and we'll be like, oh, I remember that. And you want to be able to remember it as well. Like you want to have those memories of like moments of joy. So I love that you guys make like a real effort to go on your like family adventures and your little family trips and stuff, because I think these are like the core memories, as social media likes to say, that we're like creating for our children and for us as a family too. And I saw that you recently went on an adventure holiday as a family. Was that fun? Where was it that you went to again?
So it's Calvert Lakes, which is in the Lake District. And I'd seen it on social media, and I'd seen that they kind of had like adapted like outdoor sports and activities, and I thought, oh, like that could be quite cool. Like as someone who doesn't often get the opportunity to do that kind of stuff, I thought that could be quite fun. So we went, and like it was such a fun time, wasn't it?
It was amazing. Like, and I don't think I'd realised, we obviously knew the kids hadn't done that before. I don't think I'd realised like that you never had, because I think also like being a youth pastor, like going canoeing or doing rock climbing, things can happen like with socials and things. So I'd done quite a lot of that stuff, and I know you'd grown up in church, so part of me thought, I think I knew maybe you wouldn't have done it since becoming paralysed. But I think in my head I thought, you've probably done it as a kid.
As a kid I'd camped, but I'd not actually done like very many like sport things.
No, it was so special. Like our kids loved it. Elijah like cried when we had to come home. Like he was like, I just love it so much. Like,
oh my God.
Things. It was really nice.
I'm just interrupting the episode very quickly while we're talking about family adventures, because Spring Harvest is back at Butlins for 2024, and it is an amazing family adventure. It is a time for spiritual refreshment, hearing from a brilliant team of speakers and worship leaders, and of course it's a time for families to be together and enjoy all of the on-site activities. So if you want to find out more, head over to springharvest.org and there will be all the information. Back to the episode.
I heard somebody say, and I was like quite challenged by it actually, that they'd changed their parenting tack to, instead of spending like, they used to spend like 100 quid on each kid at Christmas and 100 quid for their birthday, that kind of stuff. And they're like, it's not that we don't ever still maybe buy them a bigger gift at that time of year, but they were like, they'd scaled back some of those celebration holidays in terms of their spending on them to put it towards like holidays or days out, because they were like, your kids, and we found that even like, sometimes our kids, like Elijah went through a stage of literally like opening, oh wow, cool, bang, opening.
Next,
like, literally, like he'd have 40 presents because we've got quite big families on both sides, and it was like
just a waste.
Our house was just full of stuff that ultimately he actually didn't have time to play with, like all of them and things. And so like got to that stage of us being like, maybe our main gift might be like a day out, and then we'll just ask people like, if we wanted to get him a bike or something, can like family club together? Like, are you guys happy to do that? And most people were like, oh, it saves me spending £5 on him or having to shop. Like, if you're happy with that. And so that kind of thing, like, I think the days out stuff, like I remember all my holidays pretty much. Like, one of my earliest memories has been on holiday, like with my family when I was about 4.
What were your favourite activities that you did at the lakes?
The canoeing was my favourite. Like, it was the most exhausting. Like, I didn't realise how much effort it took to like use the paddles.
Yeah.
But we're quite competitive, aren't we? And we played games as well because there's other families there and things. And like, I'd say I'm not a competitive person because I'm quite laid back, but actually, no, I have a secret competitive side.
You're not competitive in like everyday life, so you wouldn't be like, oh, they're achieving that, I want to, like, you just be happy for people. But I think when it comes to literally a game, like,
I want to win.
Probably the closest we've ever come to divorce is playing things like Pictionary and stuff, where it's like, what the hell is that?
I like that. I like that side of it where we get to like compete with other people.
It's really fun, and it's a really lovely place, Calvert Trust, for anyone who's got any disabilities. Like, we definitely recommend going there, or those kind of things, looking into those places. It's just really special.
It was nice for the kids to like see me be involved in things, because I think they're quite used to maybe like mummy being on the sideline and watching other people do things. So it was really nice that we all got to like be involved.
Definitely, and I think it does teach them. Like, I think there's hard things that come about through being an interabled couple with kids and things. I think there are certain times where like it's difficult. Like, the kids, I remember one time that one of them, I can't remember which one, was like sick on the floor, and it's just impossible for you to really like reach it.
It's a nightmare.
And if it's in the doorway, like, you can't even, like, I could step over it and go and get the cleaning bits, whereas like Jade just wheel through it all, and it's throughout the whole house and on her chair.
Or something to throw down.
There are definitely like big challenges, but I think there's also big things like, we know that naturally we're in that privileged position. I think a little bit like couples who speak different languages. Like, you know, that like when one of them's Italian, it's like, oh, their kids have got a massive advantage because they grow up bilingual. I think our kids have that big advantage, I think, sometimes to other people, of like knowing that mummy needs help, knowing what it's like to like learn compassion, because they have to learn it really, really early on. Learning what it's like to, I guess, serve and be a part of a household where it's like,
they have to be more thoughtful.
Can you just get that for mummy, please? Or can you move your shoes because they're in mummy's way and mummy can't reach those? And so I think like there's some elements where I guess it teaches them to, I think, look outside of themselves and care and be thoughtful. And I think like you can definitely see that within them, as well as I think learning like overcoming adversity and things like that. And like, so I love that they got to see you doing that, because they understand Jade's disability in the context of like, mummy had a virus in her spine and that meant that she can't walk now and things. But they don't understand it completely. Every now and then, 2 days ago, I think she was even like, so mummy, like, she was saying about, do you know you have bones in your legs? And the blood surrounds the bones, and so if you've got bones in your legs, that means you can walk, because that's how you can walk. And I was like, yeah, no, that's really good. So she went, so do you have bones in your legs? And I went, yeah. She went, well, why aren't you walking then? And I was like, it's a little bit more complicated than that. I see your logic, but I was like, it's not mummy's bones that are the problem. But even then she was like, but just try.
Yeah, just give it a go. Look, watch me. It's quite easy, you know, because she's used to people teaching her how to do new things all the time. So I was like trying to be like, I want to, but it wouldn't work. Like, my feet won't move, will they? So trying to explain it to her in that kind of like, get the science of it, which, to be fair, it's complicated for adults to understand sometimes. So, you know, I think you can't expect a 3-year-old.
That's like really nice and sweet. I think that sort of side of it and things, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very cute.
So doing the adventure thing was just lovely to be able to, for them to see, I think, you in that light of kind of, just cracking
being
on
capable and
being included. It's lovely.
I love that. I love the way that you guys just speak about, like, even how you were just saying then, like, you feel like you're in such a privileged position because of how your kids are able to grow up in this kind of way. And I just think it's such a wonderful perspective to be seeing the like beauty of your situation and the beauty of your family that God has brought together. And I just think it's so amazing. And I listened to an episode of your podcast recently. It's the Bring to Light podcast. If anybody would like to listen to it, it's amazing. But you actually spoke, I think it was you, Jade, spoke about the Bible verse about not being crushed in spirit.
Yeah.
And when I was listening to it, I was like, wow, like it really moved me, because I was like, you speak with so much wisdom and from such a real place of depth in your relationship with God. And it's like, none of this is just surface. It's like, it's deep within you, and you, when you speak it out, there's not a doubt in my mind that you truly believe it. Whereas I feel like some people, I hear them say stuff and I'm like, do you really believe that?
Yeah.
But yeah, when you were speaking about like not being crushed in spirit, I was like, that's actually incredible. And so do you feel like this kind of your faith and the things that you're learning through your faith is something that you're teaching your children, and how do you go about teaching them that in your family?
I think it's, for us, it's quite a natural, it naturally comes up in regards to, like, I think one of the biggest stumbling blocks for people in their faith, or even people wanting to have faith but aren't sure, I think, is the whole question around suffering. And like, well, how can God allow bad things to happen? And I think what's so nice in our situation is, like, my kids are growing up in a space where they're seeing, like, God hasn't healed me, but God has given me fullness of life. And I feel like for them, I'd love them to, like, grow up to know, like, bad things do happen to Christians, and sometimes life is really hard, but that doesn't mean that they can't have a fullness of life. It doesn't mean they can't have a purpose, and it doesn't mean that they're of any less worth or value. And so I feel like it's quite nice for us, because it's it naturally comes up in our lives daily, that I hope that in the future, when bad things do happen, that they will have that mindset and that resilience to understand that doesn't mean God has abandoned us, but it means actually, like, this is a great opportunity where we can really feel God draw close to us, and maybe we can learn something here and kind of take that forward and not be held back by things in life. But so I think that's kind of what I'd like my kids to kind of
like Elijah loves his Bible stories, and like every now and then, like the story of the friends who lower their disabled friend through the ceiling and things, obviously quite poignant for our family. And like talking to him a little bit about healing, like, we believe like God does, but we also have to accept he doesn't always in every situation. And I was talking to him the other day and saying, like, well, like, one of the reasons I think God heals is because it's a sign to people that the kingdom of heaven is coming. Like, it's almost like that foreshadowing of, we know in heaven mummy will be able to walk again. But and maybe in this life, maybe, but like not definitely. But the beauty of mummy's situation, I was saying to him, is that, like, ultimately we just want people to know about God's love. And if mummy got healed, like, that might be one way people see God's love, but equally people see it through the fact that mummy hasn't been healed yet still loves Jesus. Like, because the reality for people is, other people, you've said this a load of times, like, if I got healed, people would say, like, no one knew how I became disabled, so maybe no one knows how I got healed. It might not be God. Do you know what I mean? It was just unlucky and then lucky. Like, and equally, like, I think other people would say, yeah, well, it's all right for her, she got healed. Do you know what I mean? Where's God in my pain and things? And so I think we do see that, particularly on like social media as well, where I guess, like, the platform has grown and you get the opportunity, I guess, to witness and share. I think that, like, that is a big question, like, we get asked, and I think like that those are some of the answers we kind of give. And like, God promises pain. Like, Jesus literally says, in this life you will have trouble. Like, he says, take heart, I've overcome the world. Like, there's that future promise that it won't always be that way, but he literally tells us we're going to suffer. So I think, like, his cards are on the deck for us, like, which is what I love about God. He's not kind of being like, yeah, when you come to me, everything will be fine. It's not kind of some sort of scheme. It's just really open. Like, I suffered, you're going to suffer too. But there's going to be something beautiful in that, something redemptive in it still. And one day it won't be that way. And I think, like, that, I feel like it does feel like a privilege, I think, genuinely, to be able to share that, like, with our kids. And it's lovely they have those, like, deep questions, I guess. Like,
Wow, guys, I feel like you just need to drop the mic. That was like the best preach I've heard in a long time. It was so good. But no, honestly, like, I think, your faith really inspires me, and I know it inspires so many other people as well. And I think that, especially through what you're putting out there on social media, people will really just see the light that your family exudes from within both of you, from within your children. So I hope more people will get to see God through you guys, because I think, you're doing an amazing thing.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Emma.
Emma.
Yes, but no, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having us. We've loved it. It's been
Loved
great.
it.
It's been brilliant chatting to you. And like I said, if anybody wants to listen to the Bring to Light podcast, you should. And you should also follow them on TikTok and Instagram. Is it John J. Reynolds?
John E.J. Reynolds.
John E.J. Reynolds. Get it right. Don't forget the E, okay? But no, thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate having you.
Oh, thanks, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Another Mother. Don't forget to subscribe for future episodes, and we would absolutely love your help in spreading the word about this podcast. So please do share it with your friends, share it with other parents, other mums that you may know, mums to be, parents to be, just anybody that you think might enjoy it. Thank you.